Can I pour you some tea?
Absolutely.
So here we are, episode 5.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe for our listeners, we can let them know that we have 2 more episodes after this.
Yes.
And that will be the end of our first season.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk about when therapy feels heavy and things like vicarious trauma, cumulative grief, moral distress. Things that I would say, and maybe you can agree with me, we learn about in school.
Yes.
And discuss in our education and sometimes in our additional learning, and then sometimes get a bit afraid to talk about in our work as though it's some sort of failing.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're going to change that conversation here today.
Yeah, we hope so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So just as a reminder, this is the podcast after the last client, where Hilary and I, 2 therapists, are going to just have honest, open conversations about things that we navigate being therapists in the world, talking with clients, talking with peers and colleagues, and we provide this space to explore those things with curiosity and compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we just want to, as always, provide our disclaimer that this podcast is purely for the purpose of us kind of sharing, reflecting, connecting with each other and also the community. But we do want to emphasize this is not at all in any way a replacement for actual therapy. We are discussing what I would say are some heavier themes today. Nothing, too in detail or anything in that sense. But if at any point it does feel distressing for you or floods your nervous system in any way, please know that you can take a break, step away. We will not be offended and we won't know whether you stop listening or not. But yeah, we just wanted to provide that reminder that it might have a bit heavier content than we're used to.
This is a great opportunity for us to reintroduce ourselves.
Yeah.
Again, who knows? Maybe someone's just listening to this
for the first time.
For the very first time.
Yeah.
So tell us, who are you and what do you come here with?
Yeah, so my name is Hilary. I am a registered psychotherapist here at Counselling. I've been in practice for a little over 4 years now. I primarily work with adults here at Commentry, so ages 18 and up, to infinity, as you like to say. My favorite kind of population to work with is young adults, so kind of ages 20 to 30. But I love working with people from all walks of life. And I generally support people with things like anxiety, depression, life stressors, adjustment reactions, just anything that life might bring on, things like self-esteem, self-compassion work. And a couple of my favorite kind of therapeutic interventions to work from are acceptance and commitment therapy, as well as compassion-focused therapy. Those are both kind of my niche. So that's, I guess, me as a therapist. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am Melissa Reid. I'm a registered social worker in Ontario and also the owner and founder of Counselling and Psychotherapy here in Southern Ontario. I've been seeing adult clients as well, and primarily around grief, bereavement, trauma, relational injury.
Right.
I practice from therapeutic ideologies like IFS, internal family systems work. I do provide EMDR, narrative therapy. Of course, we all need to throw in CBT because that is a very foundational type of work that we do. And I provide supervision. So this is for placement students here at Coventry, and we're excited that we will have one in September this year again, and as well as therapists out in the community. So we've talked about supervision on other podcasts, but me being now a grandmother therapist to therapists out in the world.
I love that, grandmother therapist.
Amazing.
Yeah. So do you want to introduce, I guess, again, the theme that we're diving into today?
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about how we carry things like vicarious trauma or cumulative grief. What, if any, we might experience moral distress, or when, if any, we experience moral distress from our day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big topics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to reiterate what you said earlier, Hilary, that while we are not going to talk about client cases, that will not be a focus of this podcast ever. talking about our own experiences with these topics can sometimes bring about people's experiences that feel overwhelming. So just a reminder that people can at any time stop, not feel the need to listen, and or if this does bring up things for you and you are going to therapy or have some support in your life, that might be a place to reach out and explore those things with someone who cares or a trusting professional.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of leads us into our first question, which is, how do you carry what we call cumulative grief? And maybe if you'd like to provide a definition of what cumulative grief is for our listeners, for those who might not know what that is.
Yeah. So I'm going to suggest that grief is always cumulative, in that we have a couple of experiences in being human, or a couple of feelings, it's often another way I put it, in being human, that are what we consider cumulative.
Right.
And really what this means is that when we've experienced grief in our life, and then we continue on in our world, and then we experience something else that brings about grief, we often then also re-experience the grief that we had from a previous situation, experience, whatever it might have been. And now we're navigating those two things in the same space. And while the first thing may not take up the same energy and the grief around it may not be as strong, or it could be, this is kind of what we mean in terms of, what I say is grief, and then the cumulative grief that comes in living a life.
Yes.
So as therapists, one of the things that maybe we don't talk about well is not only will we sit in front of clients that are grieving, and I often stress to therapists, we're almost always sitting in front of a client that's grieving. They may not be coming specifically for grief, but the experience that they're navigating, whether it's, an increased mental health concern, whether it's a relationship breakdown, whether it's a choosing where to go next in their life, there's an aspect of grief in that we're going to leave something behind. We're going to have to come to a new realization. There's a question in our identity.
Yeah.
And all those things can bring about a grief response. So us in the room, sitting with that person's grief, there's, and you've talked about this before, mirror effect, which it's hard not to sit in front of someone and have our own grief in our system kind of saying, hey, I'm here too. And we as therapists, it's our responsibility to hold those parts of ourselves. And we get to them, whether it's after the session or with supervision, or if we're being honest, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we don't go touch those places and try to ignore or avoid them. And then there is grief in watching the profound suffering that we sometimes do. And so that builds up in our system. Right? And I often liken grief to mercury, the substance mercury. And so if you've ever seen mercury, when it gets splashed on a surface, it will move away from itself and then move back in. And so for me, cumulative grief, and grief often looks like the moving back in of all these little particles of grief that then move in to create something big.
That's a good analogy.
And so then that bigger thing becomes harder to hold. And so how do I carry it? Sometimes for too long.
Relatable.
So again, like I said, cumulative grief, it doesn't care whether it's my client's stuff or my stuff or the world's stuff. So sometimes it can be easy to avoid navigating it because we know it's going to pull on something in our world that we're not ready to navigate or face or explore or process. So I will say there are times when I have tried to ignore it, avoid it, and then carry it heavy in my body. Right? And how does it show up? Oh, maybe I then avoid reaching out to those friends and family who I know are also grieving or going through something tough where grief might exist because I can't hold or carry anything else. Or maybe I'm reactive at home and giving my family the crumbs instead of, the meal, so to speak. And And for us, I think it's really normal, and I do want to normalize that can take a little while to realize, right? That the energy that we're putting out in the room is where the most energy is, and that we don't have the energy at home or the energy in those relationships. The other place I would say is I carry it in my heart. So I want to name like where in the body. This is work I do a lot with my clients, is like feelings get translated and communicated through our brain. But we feel them in our body. And so cumulative grief for me is like heavy-hearted, right? My chest is tight. It feels weighted. And if we're not careful and cautious, that can translate into our whole body, and it can look like depressive, right? Like just going home and crawling into bed, or just going home and vegging in front of a social media post, or, you know, mindless TV. And while all those things can be supportive to restore, if they're not restoring us, right?
For sure.
So I'm gonna take that moment and ask you, how do you hold and carry cumulative grief?
That's a loaded question.
It is, I know.
I'm gonna be honest and say not well. Particularly, I would say like this year, not well. It, as you said yourself, the point of it feeling cumulative is it's just like one grief kind of piling on top of another. And again, like while this work is such a privilege to be a therapist, I think it does also have its really tough spots. In grief we witness and carry with clients, but then also the grief that we're experiencing in our own lives. And that is where I think it can get particularly heavy when we're experiencing our own things, and have to kind of like, I don't know that like keep it in check is the word I want to use, but you know, you have to kind of like be present in the room. And so, you know, you kind of set your stuff aside, you know to come back to it after. But then if you're sitting in front of a client that's experiencing grief that maybe feels really similar to your own, of course we're going to feel something about that, or that's going to feel really heavy after the session, or, you know, at the end of your day. And I would say, to be honest and transparent, I'm definitely one of those people that like sometimes chooses not to deal with it. That's usually my default. And it's usually not until, you know, a loved one or a friend kind of calls that out and says like, hey, I've been noticing these shifts in you. And you have been that person for me. And I think it's helpful, you know, and so this is where I would say like, how do I carry cumulative grief? Well, part of it is like leaning into friends and support systems, family, my therapist, right? Like making sure I'm doing what I need to take care of myself, even if it took me a little bit to get there. But I think just acknowledging that like it is a really hard thing to carry for anyone, not just therapists, but anyone. And also, yes, acknowledging this piece that for therapists, and I would say also like a lot of, you know, anybody who works in healthcare, anybody who's in a people-facing position, first responders, like anybody who is dealing with humans as your primary clientele in what I would say are vulnerable, emotionally charged, you know, heavy situations, you're going to have to carry cumulative grief. And sometimes it feels easier than others, but it's heavy. And I think, you know, it becomes a part of you. Like everybody has this grief part. I don't think anyone is immune to grief, as you kind of already said. And we learn, part of it is just learning how to kind of like carry it with you. How do we integrate grief into our life? You know, and acknowledging it feels heavy, and it's hard and no one wants to experience it. And also it is something we have to face and deal with. And that might be where like this concept of radical acceptance comes into play, which is something I do share with clients a lot, which is exactly how it sounds, of it's us accepting things we don't want to accept, such as grief, of, you know, saying, this is really uncomfortable, this is really heavy, I don't like this, I don't want to feel this, and I know I have to move through this. And so that's kind of the radical part of it. And knowing that we will get through it, right? We will move through it. We're never going to get over it. Grief is not something you get over. Grief is something that becomes a part of you. But it's also like figuring out how does that grief live alongside joy and those glimmers as well. I read this like really insightful quote the other day that was like, the only way to deal with macro grief is by having micro joys, which I thought was so beautiful.
That's powerful.
Yeah, so true, right? Of like, yeah, grief is on a macro level, like there's no way to really describe that, but joy is, right? And things that make us happy and connection, like on a micro level, enough of those help us deal with that macro level grief.
And that's something that I often talk to clients about too, is like grief is not one thing. Mm-hmm. Grief does hold comfort in it and joy in it.
Yeah.
And connection in it.
Yes.
And so, and maybe not in the first moments, and maybe not in the intensity piece. And also maybe, right? It's such a interesting dynamic that we all navigate. And the other piece I want to say about cumulative grief is I think we're in a time period which is really interesting. And I mean interesting from a curious perspective rather than the stand back interesting kind of play. But in that we as a community and as a society went through something very hard. Mm-hmm. And we all have our own experiences of it. But one thing that is common for all of us is we lost the way it was.
Yeah.
Right? And whatever that means for people, whether it was a sense of safety in the world, whether it was how we used to do things, whether it was traditions that used to be easy and carefree and now need more thought and care, or that have disappeared completely. And so not only may we be holding on to these macro levels of grief that we experience through our life in relationships and contexts, but also as a community, as a society, it's there too.
Yeah.
And so the interesting piece, and I know we've talked about this, I've talked about it with other therapists here as well, is as therapists, we often may have experiences with clients where we have familiarity or there's something they're touching on that we ourselves have experienced. But there's often distance and there's often difference. Mm-hmm. And we've gone through this really interesting place as therapists where we're actually living through something and experience something that is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless of how the different minutia is, it's the same in that we also lost our sense of normal and our sense of the way it was.
Yeah.
And that's been an interesting piece.
For sure. Yeah. And I think maybe to summarize that, it's cumulative grief can be felt not only on an individual level, but also on a collective, like group level.
Yeah. Right? And I think we're just starting to allow ourselves to express that. That's what I've been seeing in the room and feeling in the world.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So our next question, again, another loaded one. But yeah, just kind of asking you to reflect on, do you ever feel moral distress?
Okay. So the answer is yes.
Yes.
In this work, we're going to. Mm-hmm. And so maybe we could define moral distress a little bit. Mm-hmm. So moral, of course, is our morals. What are our values and beliefs in the world of how to operate as a, and we're going to put this in quotes, good human.
Yes.
Anyone that knows me knows the dichotomy of good and bad can be so loaded and unhelpful. Mm-hmm. But what we mean here is like how morals and values are how we operate in the world in a way that feels well for us and healthy and connected. And so, of course, moral distress is when we're pushed to feel like we're acting outside of those morals or values, or something comes up for us that questions how to stay into those morals and values.
Yeah.
And why might that come up as a therapist?
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so for us, we have ethical obligations. Mm-hmm. So not only do we hold these morals and values of how we operate, which have probably been with us since we were little, but we then have this added layer of ethics that come to us from our college of how we need to operate to be in a therapeutic relationship with people. And so sometimes this comes into question when our clients themselves are in a level of distress that has them acting or experiencing things outside of what would be healthy. So moral distress can be, we've had to make a really hard call, do a report. And so maybe it would be helpful for me to also say, if you haven't been to therapy, there's 4 exceptions to confidentiality. So we keep our clients' confidentiality except in these 4 areas. If a client tells us that they're at risk of harm to themselves or to someone else, and in that therapy session, in that room, we can't get a clear sense of safety or help the client get to a place where that distress is not gone, we have to report this to an authority that's going to help ensure safety with that client, whether that's a wellness check or ensuring that they get to the hospital, whatever it is, or a friend that needs to come get them to take them to the hospital. We have to breach confidentiality.
And there's a very high threshold for that.
That's
it's only when, as you said, we can't establish safety in the room or before you're going to leave the room,
and the risk is high and real.
And of course it's never our goal to like send you to the hospital or involve emergency services. That's not what we want to do, but it is something we will do and have to do if safety truly is a risk. So and that is something your therapist will typically review with you in your first session. And then there's the 3 other ones.
So the next one is if we believe a child is at risk of harm and or a vulnerable population who cannot provide safety for themselves. And because I say it that way because that can look really different in the world around who that might be, and that would be our responsibility to evaluate with our client. That threshold is low. So risk for a vulnerable population or a child, the threshold of what risk could be pretty low, and a difference in what we're assessing. If we hear from our clients or they disclose that they have been harmed, assault or abuse by a health professional, someone mandated and regulated by a college, we have to report that to their college. That is mandated on us. And then in the very rare but real space where our file was subpoenaed by a court of law. Our courts take that really seriously, but it does happen, and we have to relinquish those files to the court if that happened. So you can maybe hear already how any of those situations for us will create a sense of some moral distress in that it acts out not only maybe of where our values sit and not wanting to cause harm in some way to our client, but also in that there's a value and a moral around creating safety for other human beings in the world. In the 2 first cases. And in the other cases, it can feel like, I would say like our values and ethics around, there's just a tension. Not that we wouldn't want to do it. And I'm going to say for the last one, actually, there is something about, there's a real thing about having to release our clients' files to the courts. It feels really vulnerable. A lot of us have worked in systems where there's a lot of court involvement with our clients and it's caused real harm, systemic trauma. And so it can create moral distress in us to know that we have to do this, even if we understand it's our obligation.
And I think there's a piece there that, you know, in therapy, right, like our priority and our biggest loyalty is to the client, because again, we are being trusted to like hold such vulnerable experiences, emotions, stories, right? And yes, there's always going to be this piece of like, it's the ethics, it's the law, it's whatever. It doesn't mean we're not going to feel something about it. You know, all of those situations that you said that a clinician may have to break confidentiality, I've had to do all 4 of them. And it is uncomfortable regardless of the circumstances. And I think every therapist you talk to or any healthcare professional that does also follow those same standards of confidentiality, it sucks. It feels really confusing, again, on this like moral values level of like it's not that we're not betraying a client's trust because they are aware of these limits and it's always communicated. They sign contracts, like they're aware. And it can feel like we're sidestepping that therapeutic relationship because, there's this rule that we have to follow, and it's an important rule, and it's a rule for a reason, or I should say guideline maybe is better. But yeah, it never feels comfortable. So I think as a therapist, you are inherently going to feel moral distress at some point, multiple times across your career, and probably also in a lot of different ways. And that is, again, where things like peer support, supervision are so valuable and important. Your own therapy, because we are dealing with situations that are really tricky to navigate and, aren't necessarily, something that someone in an office job, for example, is experiencing. There is I would say a higher emotional toll in this type of work for sure.
And higher risk.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the other piece as well. These situations, we're navigating a higher risk, and there's real harm that could come of that, not necessarily by us, but I mean harm to other people or to our clients themselves. Yeah. And that can bring in moral distress. It's true, actually. You have navigated all of those situations. I realized that after you said
so
it.
Early on, too.
Yes, I was going to say that's something that some therapists, we will almost always experience the first and the second one. But the other two is not as common, thankfully. But it's interesting that in your career, you've already navigated that.
Yeah.
I love that you said, peer support, supervision, because that's what I was thinking too, is like, how do I navigate this distress? And that is absolutely what I take to those places. Yeah. And I will say it sticks around for a while.
For sure.
It's not a moral distress in the moment. We make the decision and then that feeling. That is definitely why supervision and that peer support is so important, because we want to be able to show up consistently and predictably to those future situations. And if we don't, that moral distress can make it cloudy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it's also, again, this being a different line of work where confidentiality with our clients is number one priority. If we have a bad day at work where we're dealing with one of these situations where we might be experiencing moral distress, unfortunately, you can't necessarily go home and talk to your family or your partner about that. You're not allowed to talk about that.
That's right.
And so, we are more limited in what those outlets and sources of support look like for us. And again, just emphasizing the importance of supervision, peer support, therapy, just taking care of yourself in the ways that you can, is so important because, it's not something we want to just kind of shove down and carry around with us all the time.
Yeah. And maybe we want to differentiate here because we had said vicarious trauma at the beginning introduction.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to differentiate the difference with what we mean by vicarious trauma.
Yeah.
And I'll take that one.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, please do.
I liked your face. You were like, okay, I can do it, but I don't want to. So vicarious trauma is the term that's been given when we are sitting with someone who's experienced trauma or in relationship with someone who's experienced trauma, and we start feeling the symptoms of trauma as a result of hearing, witnessing, learning about the trauma that they've experienced. So it can sound like, things that we're navigating the client's trauma through supervision or through our own therapy, and all of a sudden we're talking about it almost in first person as though it happened to us, and the body will be feeling it as though it happened to us. So while our brain, again, this is why it's so important for us to connect the body to the brain, while the brain will know that it didn't happen to us, the body will experience it as though it will. And so helping professions, especially those that witness someone's trauma or listen to and process someone's trauma with them, are at a higher risk of vicarious trauma because we hear and experience things with our clients.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to differentiate that from moral distress.
Yes.
Moral distress is around decision making.
Yeah.
and making decisions based on the values and the ethics that we are put into. Whereas vicarious trauma is our body's experience of someone else's trauma, where we start presenting with the symptomology of trauma as a result of sitting with our clients.
Yeah, and another synonym for vicarious is also secondary trauma. So it's like, primary, secondary. But yeah, you explained it really well.
Yeah, and I want to really emphasize, and this is work that I do with therapists and clients and first responders, of vicarious trauma is not a failing. It is not a indicator that you're not doing your job well or that you've messed up in some way. Vicarious trauma, though, does mean that there needs to be more support and care for you, whether that is supervision, therapy, community, friendships, however we get support and care, and probably a growing of compassion towards ourselves. And I just want to say that as someone who sits and hears it, but also who's felt it. And while I might not have an example of vicarious trauma per se, definitely feel what we also know is compassion fatigue. Right? And that is where we're constantly exuding compassion and being in a compassionate state. And over time, if we're not taking care of ourselves, our system gets fatigued and we find it less accessible. And as a result, may show up with less capacity for our clients to be compassionate.
Right.
Definitely have felt that.
Yeah. I think every therapist has felt that at some point. Yeah.
And that's a check. Like, that's a balance that needs to be supported.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I took a moment.
That's okay.
Off script, so to say.
No, it was good. I think this is great conversation. Yeah, and I mean, I don't think I have anything to add in terms of feeling moral distress. You answered it well, of like, yes, we feel it. And I kind of added in my 2 cents there. So yeah, that maybe transitions us into our last question, which is, how do you handle, world events? You kind of talked about the pandemic already. But yeah, how do you handle world events showing up in sessions with clients?
Yeah. I'd love to just go, yeah, me too. Woohoo.
Yeah. Ditto.
And there's a time and a place for that, for
yes.
sure. I was thinking about the cumulative grief piece and our last podcast, how we talked about use of self a bit. And the interesting piece around grief is sometimes we're grieving in real time. So I'll say, for instance, last year my grandpa died. And so the grief that I felt around that, one of the things that we are trained around and learn around and get support around is that isn't a place for use of self. I'm really struggling, and if I would try to bring that to the room to be like supportive or common humanity, it may look like my client is taking care of me.
Yeah.
And so that is the nuance of being a therapist. Out in the world, I might have a friend who's like, yeah, I remember when my grandma died, and maybe that's helpful, maybe that's healing in some way, but it also may be start taking up my space so I just want to say, like, as we transition into this new topic, we're in the world in real time, experiencing our own feelings, and intimate experiences with us. And we have to be really careful of how we navigate in the room to ensure that it's our client's space.
Yeah.
So how do I handle it? And the other piece is, our clients don't always come with the same perspective or opinion or belief as we do.
Yeah, it could be very different.
It could be really different. And so we have to handle this space in neutrality while still providing the same level of care, compassion, and therapeutic intervention. I know I used that example at the very first podcast of like having so many different people's experiences in a single day.
Yeah.
And having to be able to show up for them in that way.
Yeah.
So one of it is like name it, right? If my clients are talking about it inadvertently, sometimes I just go right for it.
Yeah.
Hey, like this is what we're living in today. Is this impacting? Is this what you're talking about? So that directive nature, I am absolutely a more directive therapist. I do name it in the room. And explore like how that impacts them. It can be a way that things get richer and I learn things that I didn't know about this client. Things that they may not think are towards their goals or what they want to work on, but it has context for their life. It does impact them. So I will say, as a social worker, we are taught and trained from the perspective person and environment. And really what that means is not only what has the person brought, that biological sense and that psychological sense, but also the social aspect, like how is their environment impacting them? And so we're living in a time period where it's pretty hard to not have your environment impacting you.
Absolutely.
And so I will name it. I'll see like how it's impacting them. So for instance, and we've talked about this too, like, are they on social media all day, every day? Are they inundating their nervous system with information all the time? And we just know that a nervous system that gets threatening information all the time is going to be anticipating threat everywhere and in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn kind of response.
For sure.
Right? And the impact that has. Or are they sitting in front of the news? So I will say I've gone over to my parents a couple of times and the news is on all the time. Like the ticker tape is running along the bottom and the impact that has on our nervous system, right? The news nowadays is not the same as it used to be, where there would be like a lovely story about, Mrs. Baker down the street who had 5 kittens and, let the local children come and help take care of them. It's a lot more of like, what's threatening in our backyard? What's threatening down in the next town? What's threatening in our country? What's threatening in our continent? What's threatening in our world? So we get so much news and our brain can't discern what we need to, pay attention to and spend time with and what we can let go of. Right?
And also knowing there's a difference between like sticking your head in the sand, right? And like ignorance is bliss. Like obviously there are things happening in the world where we can't turn a blind eye and we shouldn't turn a blind eye. And also like we're allowed to take breaks. We're allowed to recognize I don't have capacity for this. This is flooding my nervous system. This is incredibly distressing. And at the end of the day, like you're not going to be a help to yourself or others if you're just in like this constant state of fight or flight and feeling hijacked all the time. So it is so important to, I think, have boundaries around your social media consumption, your news consumption, however you get that information. Having your own set of kind of parameters around like, what am I able to consume? Is this helpful? Is this harmful? And just not like constantly, we don't want the default to be us constantly flooding ourselves, right?
And we can speak to this and also name the privilege.
Absolutely.
That we both have in saying this, and often that our clients have as well, in being able to disengage. The other reality is there's people living this where there isn't disengagement because it's in their house or it's in their neighborhood and it's a lived experience. And so it goes to moral disengagement. And I recently wrote a blog post about this, but that if we don't find ways to disengage from things that are constantly causing us to believe that we're in a chronic state of threat, then our brain actually starts in disengaging with this information in and shifting the moral value and the way that we want to live by numbing us out to the things that are important. And then we don't show up and advocate and put the work into the areas that we want to spend time and ensure. Because we can't fight for every social injustice. That's the sad reality, because the reality in this world right now is there's a lot. And so giving ourselves the energy and taking back the capacity so that we can show up in the places that we want to, and to create change.
Yeah.
Right. And again, I think there's a famous quote that says, changing one thing has the ability to change the world. Right. Yeah. And I do truly believe that. And so that moral disengagement, if we don't do it, then we're going to start numbing out and starting to let things slide that we in the past would have had a moral disagreement with.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that maybe ties into like what I would say is inherently part of being a therapist, psychotherapist, social worker, anything, whatever the title. It is inherently like social justice work, right? Like there is a social advocacy part. It is actually in like our code of ethics, standards of practice, like. So I think that then kind of going back to this question of like, how do we handle these world events showing up in the room? There's a balance in it, of course, but yeah, like if someone's being blatantly like discriminatory to a certain population, we're going to call that out. We're going to challenge it from a place of like, curiosity of like, what's happening for you right now that this is the type of reaction, but also still letting that person know like, hey, we don't do that. So yeah, I think that's also just a part of how we do address those kind of world events showing up in a session. Another way that I will do that is and you kind of spoke to this already of like talking about privilege, right? And acknowledging that for a lot of people, like these are their lived experiences. It's not just world events. It's like, this is their life every day. So yeah, two important pieces for me around that is what you said about like calling out privilege, right? And I will actually verbalize that, saying like, I'm a straight white woman from like a middle to upper class, like socioeconomic level, like I have a lot of privilege. And so putting that out there to recognize that I know that that's a thing, right? Even as the therapist. But then also thinking about intersectionality, right? Which is recognizing that our clients, but also people in the world who are experiencing these things and are actively happening to them, there's so many different parts of their identity, right, that make up who they are and make up that lived experience. It's race, it's culture, it's financial, socioeconomic position, ability, right? Both physically, mentally, like all of those things. There's so many different ways to, I think, look at that idea of privilege, but also look at like how many environmental contextual factors does this person also have, potentially working against them, or systems that are causing harm to them or feeling oppressive or, discriminatory. So I think that is also such an important part of like dealing with those, types of world events, issues, systems showing up in a session.
And it came up for me recently. So yes, I do sometimes doom scroll on social media.
We all do.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
We're all impacted by this change in our culture. But something that came up, interestingly, mine will probably bore most of my clients because it's therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and babies.
Yes. Babies are the curveball.
That's right. And I had a psychiatrist who was also a social worker, interestingly, come up and recently talk about something that I think we navigate, and this is a good kind of leeway into it or segue into it, is systems trauma, which, going back to moral distress, I think this is sometimes where we feel it too. And systems trauma being, we know how we could support our client. We know like the things that our client could need or benefit from, and the systems that could support it are either not functioning well, or they're not there anymore, or they can't access it. Or there's a 5-year wait list. And so the systems trauma, I think that both our clients and we feel around this helplessness. So one of the aspects of trauma is often powerlessness or helplessness, that we feel in our work. When we know that there's these resources that are located in systems and we can't help our clients access them or do things with them. And that's something I think we also hold that I just wanted to name in this work.
I think that's a really great point, and it is a pretty, exhausting part, I think, for both us and the client of there are so many systems right now that are failing people in so many different ways. And yeah, sometimes like as a therapist, like I don't know what to say to clients other than like, yeah, you're right. Like the system is not helpful. It sucks. And also, yeah, sitting in that feeling of like helplessness of like, I don't have anything else to offer you. And that is frustrating for me. So I can't even begin to imagine how that person feels that's sitting in front of me. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add? Is there anything about handling world events showing up in the sessions? You kind of answered it, but I just wanted to check in.
No, I think I answered it, and like I share a lot of the same sentiments that you had said. Yeah, I think we had a pretty well-rounded discussion there.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I guess that kind of brings us into talking about our glimmers and our edges. And yeah, as always, a glimmer is something that we found to be enjoyable, you know, whether it be connection, something that brought us a laugh, a smile, anything like that. Think of a sparkle in your life, if you will. And an edge is exactly how it sounds, something that maybe has felt like a challenge that we're working towards overcoming or are just sitting in and feeling particularly heavy.
Yeah. So I will say we record these ahead of time.
Yeah.
And so this may come out in the summer, but the glimmer is happening right now.
Yes.
So I had 2 glimmers actually. And
Lovely.
I'm gonna share both of them.
Yeah.
So I recently attended, we now have an IFS Canada conference. So IFS is, the institute is located in the US, and so a lot of the trainings, a lot of the conferences, a lot of what they do is located in the US, which they have a virtual component, but from a physical perspective that can be hard to access. So this year we had our first IFS Canada conference, and while it was virtual, next year's is in person.
Yay.
But I went and I was really looking for that sense of community and connection, and I was so glad I did, because I definitely experienced it that day, and I got the opportunity to sit in really helpful workshops. And so that idea of continued learning, it is something about being a therapist as well. And so that was awesome. I got to connect to self. I got to experience some parts that I don't usually tap into, and came away feeling like I'd filled a cup. And then the other part, the other glimmer was I got to go to my kiddo's track meet and watch her get first twice.
Yay,
and just the exuberance and the excitement, and watching her school was so awesome. They were cheering for all their teammates, and it was just such a good feeling. I will say there was a little grief because my partner said at the end, you know, this is our last kid that we're going to watch do this.
Aww.
That was not nice.
Yeah. Way to ruin it.
That's right. Definitely. Or at least give another feeling there that I wasn't anticipating, which was the grief feeling around the truth. So joy and grief in the same space.
Yeah, both can be true.
And then a learning edge for me right now would be, let me think. Well, part of this is I'm trying to become IFS certified, and it's tough. It's a lot of work. And there's a discourse in me of discomfort and challenge around, I haven't really participated in certification throughout my career. I've done lots of trainings, and not every training needs a certification, but I'm really passionate about becoming certified in IFS. I can't explain it. It's just something that's come on. But it's really challenging me to get all these qualifications and follow all these steps. There's definitely a frustrated part that I'm having to sit in and really navigate. Is this as important as I believe it is? And do I have it in me to keep going? And so there's a little trying to figure out a way to dig deeper right now. Because I'm close to getting all the pieces that I need. But I'm also been doing it for 2 and a bit years. And so just some challenging parts in me, and stay tuned. Who knows? We'll find out whether I end up getting certified or not, but that's kind of where that's sitting. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. A glimmer for me. yeah, so for those of you who might not know, I am engaged.
You are.
I got engaged last October. We're getting married in January 2027, but tomorrow we have our engagement photo shoot, which I'm looking forward to. I think it'll be really fun. We're doing it in downtown Guelph, which is where my partner is from, so that kind of has some special meaning for him. But we're supposed to have beautiful weather. We had to reschedule because of the weather earlier this week, so it turns out it will be a better day tomorrow. That's awesome. Really looking forward to that and just doing something fun together. Yeah, and an edge for me, I guess, in keeping with the topic of grief, my Nana, who I was very close with, just recently passed away about a week ago. And so, yeah, that is something that I am really struggling with. I have a very heavy heart, feeling lots of grief, all the other feelings that come with that. Yeah, and several other family members, of course, are experiencing it. You know, I'm absolutely heartbroken for my mom and myself. But yeah, I think just being honest about, I am actively experiencing grief right now. A lot of the things that we talked about today felt really, accurate, raw for me. But it's also, there's a part of me that is grateful that we talk about these things because that part feels seen and understood. And I hope other people hopefully feel that as well from today's episode.
Yeah, thanks, Hilary.
Thank you.
I appreciate so much that you named that. And maybe just also saying, and there's nothing to do here, but just name it and be with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, can you share with everybody where they can find us? I would, but honestly, this is where I'm a little less capable.
We've assumed our roles in this podcast. So for where you can find us, our podcast, After the Last Client, it's on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. We've also linked it in our Instagram bio as well as on our website. There's a little podcast widget that you can visit. And then we're on all of the socials. We have TikTok, our Instagram, and Facebook are linked together. But that's at Calming Tree Counselling. Our website is calmingtree.ca or calmingtreecounseling.ca. Both will bring you to us. And then again, a quick Google search will probably bring up a lot of those things for you too if you just search our name.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to differentiate because I'm not sure if I heard you right. TikTok is after the first client.
Yeah.
Just to be, you won't find Calming Tree on TikTok.
No, it is, our TikTok is only for our podcast, yes.
Absolutely.
But everything else is Calming Tree Counseling.
Yeah. And so just a little bit about Calming Tree Counseling and Psychotherapy. We are a group counseling practice here in Kitchener in Southwest Ontario. And we have a team of about 13 therapists. We provide counseling care to children as young as 4 all the way to infinity, and have therapists that work with all different modalities, people that work with children, teens, youth, relationships, couples. So if you're looking for support, there's likely someone here who can support you. If you go to our website, you can book online, but if you're finding that it's a bit more difficult to figure out who you might want to sit with or you have questions, we have our amazing admin assistant, Hannah, here who can help navigate those questions or challenges and help you get in front of the right person.
Yeah, she's very helpful and she's a real human, not a robot.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much everyone for listening, and I will pass things over to Melissa to do our sign off.
So take good care.
Thanks everyone.